And I'm giving thanks to the Hunab, the one and only giver of movement and measure, the great central sun and black hole at the epicenter of the omniverse, the maker and modeler of all things physical and all things non-physical. Heart of earth, heart of sky, heart of humanity, Hunab. I'm here to do your work, and I thank you for your continued energetic blessings and support. Greetings, dear soul. It is I, Crispy. And today, I'm taking a deep dive into two extremely vibrant characters, Jacques Kerouac and Neal Cassidy, as you already know. Now, first I'm going to introduce a little bit about their history and then do the in-depth look at their Mayan astrology. So let's move over to my computer while I help that process. So here we go. In case you don't know, on the right here is Jack, on the left is Neal. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of their history, but first you should know that their relationship started off with an enormous amount of flair and energy and passion. By the way, Jack was not a bisexual, and Neal was. But they started off for many years, actually, which became the story of On the Road, feeding each other's passions and their goals and their dreams. But things went sour, to say the least. So Neal Cassidy is an incredibly vibrant character, and he ended up being the driver for the Merry Pranksters, Ken Kesey's Merry Pranksters, driving the bus all across America. And just a quick glimpse into their Mayan birthdays. Jack is called Manifesting Dusk, and Neal is called A Patient Traveler. Now, of course, we're going to get into the shadow ego control dramas, and first things first, the major control drama for all people born on tone 9, patient, is impatience, which I think could be true of Neal for most of his life. So now a little history lesson. Kerouac and Cassidy met in 1946 through Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs. From the beginning, Kerouac was fascinated by Cassidy's raw energy, his chaotic charisma, and unique way of expressing himself, along with bringing his then 16-year-old wife, Luann, to meet everybody. Cassidy, in turn, was drawn to Kerouac's intellect, poetic sensibility, and vision, already having published some poetry by that time. Together, they became the Pied Piper and the scribe of the American youth in the 50s and 60s that became the Beats and then the Hippies. Cassidy was much more than a friend. He became Kerouac's muse. His initial letters to Jack, full of rhythm, spontaneity, and an uninhibited thought, were a major influence on Kerouac's development of spontaneous prose, the flowing, unedited style that defined On the Road and Kerouac's later works. Jack wrote On the Road in 1951 in a 3-week amphetamine-fueled rush, condensing his and Cassidy's 5 years of randomly insane journeys into one book. Neal was called Dean Moriarty in the book, the dark and flawed hero protagonist, to Jack's character, the narrator, Sal Paradise. Their friendship played out on long road trips in reality, nights of drinking and jazz, and enormous amounts of sex, mostly for Neal, but not at all only. He was called, by the way, a sexual predator by his own daughter, or she corrected it to sexual opportunist, but he was definitely a perverted con man. They were both married and both cheated on their wives countless times on these journeys on the road. Incidentally, they were both Catholics and would sometimes go to confession to absolve themselves and then do it all again. Which, by the way, is very common for many Catholics, just as an aside. In fact, Carolyn Cassidy, one of Neal's wives, noted that his Catholic upbringing might have contributed to a psychological need for punishment and a sense of guilt, which she believed fueled his rebellious behavior, and which might also be true of a billion or so other Catholics. Over time, Kerouac became more disillusioned with the beat lifestyle, while Cassidy, who never wrote a major book himself, continued drifting, eventually joining Ken Kesey's Merry Pranksters in the early 60s. Kerouac, however, grew more conservative and withdrawn and began heavy alcohol drinking every day, often starting in the morning and going until late at night. At the same time, Neal was dropping LSD and became the infamous driver of the electric Kool-Aid acid test bus that went across the country and up and down the California coastline. Neal did a lot of LSD, and Jack definitely did none. He was deeply skeptical of LSD and the whole psychedelic movement. LSD amplified Cassidy's already manic, hyper-verbal persona. Some say it pushed him further toward mental instability and burnout, but I'm sure he combined it with speed and booze, which would do more of the pushing towards mental instability and burnout, if you ask me. So while Cassidy was riding the wave of psychedelia and driving the bus, Kerouac was watching from the sidelines, increasingly bitter, retreating into so-called Catholic mysticism and reminiscing about the past and getting drunk every day. Neal Cassidy was known to use amphetamines heavily, especially during the height of his time with the Beat Generation and later the Merry Pranksters, and right up until the day he died. He and countless others used a combination of uppers, amphetamines, and downers, barbiturates and alcohol, to put an enormous amount of stress on his physical body and nervous system and his heart. It could be said that Kerouac idealized Cassidy as the free-spirited hero of On the Road, Dean Moriarty, but the reality of Cassidy's behavior, chaotic, unreliable, and extremely self-centered, eventually wore their relationship thin. There was also likely envy and emotional dependency. Kerouac envied Cassidy's effortless magnetism, and Cassidy, perhaps, envied Kerouac's literary accomplishment. Both men were searching for something transcendent, and both often felt let down by life and each other. Their bond never quite broke, but it definitely frayed and curdled. When Cassidy died in 1968, Kerouac was already in a very downward spiral of alcoholism and isolation. He mourned Cassidy, but by then his affection was tangled with bitterness and regret, and Jack died 18 months later in similar yet more grotesque circumstances. Kerouac had come to feel used, particularly when he perceived that Cassidy took advantage of his generosity and fame without offering loyalty or respect in return. He wrote, "Neal was never my real friend. He just used me to get his kicks." Cassidy, for all his charisma and perhaps because of it, was deeply flawed. He had a very troubled past, constant legal problems, and a complete inability to commit or follow through. He fathered children with multiple women, burned through friendships like discarded matches, and left constant chaos in his wake. Neal died under mysterious and tragic circumstances on February 4th, 1968, at the age of 41. He was at a friend's wedding in Mexico, and afterwards, drunk and on speed, wandered along a train track and walked until he dropped dead. He died the way he lived, on the move, in between worlds, chasing something unreachable. His death, like his life, became a legend, raw, unsolved, and still echoing in the American halls of fame and shame. Jack Kerouac died 18 months later, October 21st, 1969, at the age of 47, from internal bleeding caused by cirrhosis of the liver, a result of chronic alcoholism. Kerouac had spent much of his later life depressed, isolated, and disillusioned. The wild freedom he helped romanticize in On the Road had turned into a hellish prison, trapping him in his mother's home where he died. So just like Neal, Jack died from the lifestyle he chronicled so vividly, burnt out from years of physical and emotional abuse. In short, their relationship was not just an ecstatic road trip fantasy. It was a real human connection, volatile, inspiring, painful, and unforgettable. The very things that made it creatively powerful also made it emotionally destructive. Their friendship was emotionally intense, and it symbolized the creative fire and the emotional waves of a life lived outside social convention. It's a classic case of the artist and the muse, but with both roles blurring and burning and bleeding into each other. Okay, so now it is time for the Mayan lens, which is the Pleiadian lens, especially when viewed from the perspective of Mayan embodiment. So here we go. Jack, as you may recall, was dusk, the first of the blue glyphs, and definitely anchored in the emotional body. And Neal was the third of the yellow glyphs, all about the fire. Now, here's a chart I made up to describe the relationships. All of the glyphs have a mirroring or friendly relationship to all of the other glyphs of the same color. Now, you'll notice the double-sided nature of mirroring. Doesn't automatically mean friendliness. And then when we go from water into fire, it is mysterious and potentially confusing. Too much of either one will annihilate the other. And really, they are more like opposites than anything else. I think it's true if you looked anywhere, you can see that Neal was on fire all the time. All ends of his candles were burning all the time. And Jack was a very emotional man. So let's continue on with a deep dive into their Mayan astrology. This is just one high vibe code phrase for Jack. And we're going to talk about all of the guides as well. Tone 10 is called manifesting, and the glyph is dusk. And then we've got, in order, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's always the order I teach them. Everyone born on tone 10 has 2, 3, 4, 5 in those positions. And everyone who is a dusk has the eagle, offering, Gaia, and the monkey in those positions. So here's his other co-birthday exemplars. Isn't that interesting? And today is Keen 8, by the way, so their birthday is coming up very soon. The day I'm making this video. Now, moving on, this is a compilation of all of the key code words for both the glyph and the tone. And what I'm going to focus on today, because we know of their addictions and their, one even could say, tragic deaths, I'm going to focus primarily on the shadow ego dramas. So again, taking a closer look at all of these, all the happy, fun, good words are there, but look at this. Jealousy and misery. I think it could be said that Jack died of a combination of jealous misery. So again, just before we go into the other guiding glyphs, the order is past wisdom, divine feminine, divine masculine, and future vision. So pairing ego, let's take a look at that. Here's all the key code words for both. And in general, this time frame, the past wisdom guide, it's basically the first 13 years of life, childhood. By the way, all guides are with a person their whole life. There's no time when any of them stop or are not affecting you, because they are you. In Lak'esh Alakin, I am another you, you are another me. Every one of the birthdays on the Divine Mayan Zolkin are all connected, and in fact, they're all one reflection, fractal of each other. So let's look at the shadow ego development of Jack Kerouac's childhood, if you will. We've noted the Catholic upbringing, always accompanied with guilt, but I'm feeling a strong codependency. And while there's definitely escapism as a major influence in On the Road and his whole life, I think there was more emotional unpredictability. But we've got codependence in both cases, so that definitely has to be there. You know, you could make a phrase like, codependent escapism leads to emotional unpredictability. Now, just for some reference point, here are the exemplars for that day. Now again, moving across from the past, moving up one tone to the Divine Feminine, activating offering. There's a very large chance that all of these can affect a person, but this is in Jack's female side or receptive side or his yin side. All humans have both in equal proportions. I think what eventually happened for him was low self-esteem and a combination of blaming oneself and blaming others. He seemed to be very bitter and critical of all of the hippies and especially of Neal in particular. So, our exemplars for this position. Interesting pair. Now, again, moving from Divine Feminine, we go across the heart chakra and into the Divine Masculine, which is stabilizing, first of all. So this is a very solid energy for his outer face, his public persona. Let's look at all the key code words. Here they are. I think what ended up happening for him was ignorance of betrayal, or at least that was present for a long time. Then he became quite aware of it, and possibly volcanic emotions came into it, volcanic instability perhaps, which he did his very best to cover over with alcohol every day. And here is an interesting pair. Charles Brasseur de Bourbourg was a French Catholic priest who went to Mexico, I believe in the 1800s. And actually he was one of the good guys and did a lot to help bring the majesty of the Maya to the rest of the world. And of course, everyone knows Maggie Smith. So again, going to the last guide, Empowering Monkey, and let's take a look at all of the key code words here. What brought him down? Oh boy, I think disempowering unimagination could have been adding to his depression. Now, we don't actually happen to have any empowering monkeys, so let's move on to Neal. Here he is, the impatient traveler. He was probably on a quest for mastery, for sure. And boy, oh boy, let's hope this lifetime is going to help him out with that. So again, let's take a look at everything to do with tone 9 and everything to do with the traveler. Impatience, again, is the first of the ego dramas. And then I think that combined with aimlessness, impatient aimlessness. He actually had no goal whatsoever and was in a very big hurry to get there. And here is his co-exemplar. Another man with a lot of fire, you must admit, although I think he's doing much better with patience in general. So let's move on to his Past Wisdom Guide, Initiating Seed. Tone 1, very intense. I haven't talked about the chakras, but there it is. And the seed, as you shall see, is very sexual. It has a lot of seed planting in it. And I think we know about Neal that in his early childhood, his sexuality began to be activated. This has become clear in my research. Definitely, self-centered sexual issues traveled with him on his life journey. Interestingly, here are the 3 exemplars. Chuck Berry, as you may know, had a lot of sexual issues as well. I think the other 2 have kept their noses clean in that department. All right, so once again, moving from tone 1 to tone 2 into pairing mirror knife. Let's take a look. Codependency comes up again with all pairing people. Guilt and shame is there again. What I'm feeling for Neal, because judging is in both. He had some form of either internal and externalized judgmental double crossing going on again for his whole life. Here's our exemplars in this position. Tone 1, tone 2, moving across the heart chakra to tone 3, we have the activating reincarnation, also known as activating death. Let's take a look. What I'm feeling was affecting him here in his outer self, his public persona, his yang energies, was hyperactive recklessness. And our exemplars here, interesting trio, one must admit. Now, final, tone 4, stabilizing solar chief. And again, with Jack being tone 10, all of these were one tone different. Okay, so a lot of similarity between them. They have 3 of the same tones for guides. Future of stabilizing solar chief. Now, again, I need to elucidate that the future vision guide is always present in a person's life. So generally the past is up to age 13, but it's always present your whole life. Then we've got from 13 to 26 and 39, generally takes 26 years to really work on getting married, having babies, until you're about 39. And in the Mayan society, they understand that all humans are both divinely feminine and divinely masculine, so it's quite likely that by age 39-ish they have harmonized those and embodied those 2 aspects of themselves, or even much younger. And then from about age 39 to definitely age 52, the future vision guide comes into play more so than at other times. However, as we know, both these men died quite young, but those energies were there their whole life. Now, let's take a look at Kan Ahau and why that's a special day. In case you didn't know, this is the day of December 21st, 2012. So the 5,125 year cycle, which is 13 Baktun long. Each Baktun is 144,000 days. So 13 times 144,000 days is the long count, which is approximately 5,125 years, and it ended on this day. And super high vibe day, as you can see. A large amount of energy. Oh my goodness. The phrase that's coming to me is stalking without boundary issues. And that would mean primarily he stalked sexual energy from everyone without regard to their boundary issues. Whew. All right, let's take a look at our exemplars for this position. Now, maybe it's just me, but I feel what has happened in Western society in the last 70 to 80 years is a much broadening and opening of the divine feminine. When Neal and Jack were on the road, this awareness was not there. People were just trying to bust out of this Catholic control system of the government and the baby boomers clamping down on freedoms. And the beats definitely put the tent peg up for the hippies and the flower power to blossom. Now, back to these for women, I feel that none of them now in our daily lives would be the least bit swayed by or interested in either Jack or Neal. And 50, 60 years ago, they probably would have had a different emotional response to them. I love the fact that this one day is anchored in by these 4 goddesses, I will call them. And that really brings up the matter that both Neal and Jack were completely devoid of any connection to their own divine femininity or femininity being divine outside of them. They did not feel that at all, is my impression. Just a hunch, but I feel there's a deep wisdom to it. Now, I'm going to take a briefly deeper dive into their relationship, which is something I do for my clients when I do a cosmic couples counseling reading for them. I'm not sure if you know this, but the Mayan calendar is the only system in existence where you can combine 2 people to make a third entity. And in fact, let me just share with you, when I do a reading for somebody, they receive this booklet here, which explains about the calendar and has a full year of the calendar and has every key code word for every glyph and tone. And then, along with all these patterns, it shows you how to combine people, which is really quite easy. And you get lots of other goodies, including the shadow ego work. But for now, let's just go back into here and let's talk about why their relationship was so fiery. Now, I also do need to say that any combination can work out smoothly and easily. Some are easier than others, and some are more challenging than others. But the only thing that will ruin any relationship is the shadow ego. If either one or both people are coming from a high enough concentration of their shadow ego in their daily activities, the relationship will not work out well for either. So again, here we go. As you remember, Jack is tone 10 of the dusk glyph manifesting, and Neal is tone 9 of the traveler, patient traveler. So when you add those together, it's very simple. For example, we're going to add 9 to 10 in the 13 system. So you got 10 and then 11, 12, 13, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And when you add the third glyph plus the 12th, that's the 15th. So the 2 of them together make balancing eagle. Now, 2 things. First of all, they make a blue glyph. And when I do a reading for a couple, what ends up happening here is I create the document, first each individual person, and then for the combined person, I compare how each of them relates to the spiritual entity or the spiritual baby, if you will. Now, Jack and Neal's spiritual baby is balancing, and you'll notice that I portray balancing like a rollabola. And when any two people get up on one rollabola, could be tricky, almost guaranteed to be tricky. We all know what happened. Additionally, for Neal being fire and Jack is water, and their combined is water, that just wasn't ever going to be close. And obviously from a law of one standpoint, Neal was extremely far out on the service to self scale. Probably never really did anything with intention of service to other. And like anyone who is an addict of any kind, they're doing that for themselves. So Jack as well, primarily service to self, even though he did a lot of work that could have been enjoyed by other people as well. But let's go into a brief look at just what balancing eagle means. And here's all the key code words. Of course, unbalanced. Now, what I'm seeing happening for them could have been hyperactive imagination combined with escapism. But once again, codependence is there. Wow. Unbalanced codependence. Oh my goodness. So many painful things. We do not have an exemplar for this one day, actually. But here are the guides. And what I would do for them is individually combine and compare and contrast each of their guides to each of these. It's quite a complicated process, and my catchphrase is, it leaves no spiritual stones unturned. So if I were to do a cosmic couples combined mind astrology for you, there's no hiding anything. It's all there. If you want to look, I don't force you to do it, by the way. I give you all the tools, and we have 4 Zooms. I like to do them weekly, so the whole process takes a month. And I promise you that by the end of it, you two will know each other better than you've ever known each other before. Possibly, again, from the Pleiadian, Mayan, intergalactic, multidimensional perspective. There's nothing else like it on planet Earth. So, I'm ready to draw this ceremony to a close, which I will put out the candles on my own afterwards. But for now, in Lak'esh alakin, Namaste.